Hello, my friends. Today I am here to just riff a little bit on the subject of poop, bowel movements, poo, whatever you would like to call it. And the reason is because it is coming up a lot lately, at least in my world, with clients. Everyone I speak to seems to be having an issue with their bowel movements, and including our furry little friend here, Theo, who you can see who's furiously enjoying a bone in the background. And so I thought I would come on and just share what has been coming up, not just for the sake of talking about poop, but because it is definitely tied into the ascension process and what we are experiencing here globally as a collective, energetically with what is happening in the cosmos. So, how does poop and cosmos come together? Well, here, first, let me ask you a question. Have you had any experiences yourself where your own bowel movements, what you would deem regular, has suddenly changed or has shifted or is just different in some ways? Here's what people have been telling me, and let me know if this sounds like anything like what you've been having happen to you. People have been saying, there's a lot of mucus in my stool when there normally isn't, or I'm having trouble having a bowel movement. So, like, we're talking about like mild to moderate to maybe even extreme constipation, or having what feels like an obstruction happen in the bowels where nothing is moving, everything just like ground to a halt. Or maybe it's now looser, or maybe if you typically have a bowel movement first thing in the morning or, by 11, that now that's not happening, it's changed. And maybe it's like, okay, maybe you're having a little bit in the morning or nothing in the morning, and then not experiencing a full bowel movement after several trips to the bathroom to make your deposit into the poop bank. If this sounds like you, I want you to know you're not alone. And that's why I came to do this little video, this little live, is because it's been concerning for a lot of folks. Now, rightfully so to some degree, because our elimination system and the health of that system really dictates the health of our overall bodies in many cases. And so it's important to pay attention to how is our body doing when it comes to our regular bowel movements, urination, and just eliminating the toxins from the body. So when I started to get this question, of course, I started to ask the body consciousness of those who were asking the questions, being our clients that were asking me. And then what's interesting is I was also noticing a difference in my own regular bowel movements. My own system was, typically first thing in the morning. I'll give you too much information, but first thing in the morning, my body wakes up as soon as I have a drink of any kind, or sometimes it's that wakes me up, is like my body wanting to go to the washroom and eliminate, and so have a bowel movement. But for me, it was like, oh, every day. It's just like the first thing that happens when my body wakes up is it wants to go to the washroom and fully eliminate. So it's like I will have one beautiful bowel movement in the morning and maybe another one in the afternoon, but pretty much everything that's in me is gone. And that feels wonderful for me. That's just how my body operates. But for some other people, it's like, okay, I have a few in throughout the day and they're this formed or they're this solid or they're whatever they are. And that's been changing. For myself, it was like suddenly I'm not having the bowel movement in the morning, but nothing else had changed. So I would be eating the same way, I would be drinking the same amount of water, getting similar rest, but the bowel movements weren't changing. Sorry, the bowel movements were not consistent. Other people are telling me that they're having a lot of mucus. Now, what's interesting is even our dog, for the last week and a half, his bowel movements have been different as well, and he's experienced mucus. I've had clients that have been talking about there's mucus in my stool when there normally isn't. Is that anything that any of you have related to or you're having experience? Please post in the comments if you have, and I would like to address that as to why. And other people are, like I said, really, maybe even feeling that they're having an obstruction of some sort, which is definitely something you want to be concerned with. So please don't take this as, if you're feeling anything, completely ignore it. But I want to give you a perspective that's coming straight from the body consciousness that makes a lot of sense, especially with what's going on now. So people across the board, women, men, animals. So notice in your animals, is there anything different that's happening with them? The reason that we're experiencing this, and the reason I'm bringing this up now, is because maybe you have heard that what is taking place at this time, what happened on Monday, the 17th of July was a new moon. But what that also marked was the following day, excuse me, there was what's called a shift in the nodal axis. And this is all stuff that's happening cosmically. So, to do with different planets, different alignments, who's coming into play major roles energetically in our experience here on Earth. And believe it or not, this particular shift that we are experiencing now, since actually the 777 Stargate, which was what? What is that? That was simply July the 7th, 2023. Those three numbers are all sevens. And even though on the surface, if you're not familiar with numerology or astronumerology, it seems like, so what? It's a bunch of sevens. It actually changes the energetics and the frequencies with which we are playing out our lives in here on Earth. And it does impact our physical vessels, much like the moon has a gravitational pull that impacts the bodies and bodies of water. Numerology has a similar effect. Energy has a similar effect, as we know, on our physicality. And so all of these things, these celestial events, are actually impacting our physicality. And one way that we are really noticing this at this time, not always, but this particular chapter, specifically between the 7th of July and now, where are we? We're on the 19th. So this window of like 12 days already is a period when we are going through another layer of shedding, but one that we haven't really had before. It's kind of like the closing of a door, an old way of being. That's what this particular window represents. So it's like the closing of a chapter, a closing of a life, essentially, like closing the door on an old life. And this window now, as of the new moon and this new nodal axis shift that was really yesterday and Monday and Tuesday, is opening to an entirely new life. Because this nodal shift, what the north node is, which is the one where this shift is taking place, that is of most interest to us. The north node is the direction we are moving towards in our evolutionary journey, personally and collectively. And so this shift started then, but we were leading up to it or preparing for this shift all the days prior, basically from the 7th up until then, which would be like 11 days, 12 days, let's say roughly. And so, what this meant in terms of our physical bodies and how our bodies were experiencing this is flushing out of any last residue. So think about what it's like when you have a cold or you're just getting over something. What typically happens with the body? Systems are kind of acting out of sequence. Mucus is definitely a very common theme, right? When the body is dealing with like something that may be impeding the immune system, mucus is very common because mucus does what? It helps flush things out. It's kind of slimy. It carries with it stuff sticks to it, and then it moves through the system easily. So, as far as the physical body is concerned, these interruptions, particularly mucus too, or even like a slimy, maybe not mucusy, almost like an oily when it comes out of the stool, it is playing a really important role, and right now more than ever. So it makes perfect sense if we look at what's happening astrologically, cosmically, ethereally, in the non-physical and in just the cosmos with the different planetary influences, that our bodies would be responding in this way. Months prior and years prior, there has been so much talk about purging, but in many cases, it was more energetic. It was more mental, emotional, where things are coming up for us. Not to say that things haven't necessarily been coming up over the last week to 10 days or 2 weeks, but we're noticing it at this time coming through the bowels. And if you think about it, what are the bowels? The bowels are really representative of like the core, the very baseline. It's like the deepest plumbing system within the body. And so, if you were to do a flush There's many different degrees of flushing and purging or clearing. You could say the most surface would be energetic, right? It's the most sort of detached, not detached, but it's the most outer most part of our being, right? You have the physicality here in the center. Then you would have, maybe mental, emotional kind of within the body, but still within the ethereal or the light body, the energetic body. But then the energy body would be like the furthest out, I could say, as an analogy. And so energetic purging is something that happens, and that's when you just suddenly feel lighter, you just feel better after a heaviness. And then there's like the mental emotional purging, which Lord knows everybody has been doing over the last several years, but particularly the last several months. There's been a lot of that, things coming up to trigger us, challenges in relationships or financial or with collaborations, whatever. We've been feeling it, experiencing these things in our outer life and moving through them. And that would be like the mental emotional purging that's happening, allowing us to see what is no longer serving in terms of ways of being, and then releasing them by no longer thinking those thoughts. And then our energy body's impacted and we feel better. Well, we're now at a new level. It's like the deepest of this deep clean that is happening now. And it's like the last stage of this purification that's taking place before we literally, because of this north node shift, which is the direction we are going as a collective in our evolutionary journey, solo and collectively. Now that this is happening, what do we have to do? Of course, you got to go deeper and get the last remnants out. And metaphorically, as well as very literally, to go the deepest, you go into the bowels of the being. The bowels of the physical body is like the last deepest part. And even if you look at it from a health perspective, right? Anybody who's done like detoxes, cleanses, or who's been on this path for a long time, you know that in the bowels, one of the things when someone's suffering from a major illness, maybe it's a chronic illness or life-threatening illness, right? One of the first things a good holistic practitioner will do will look at, when was the last time you did a detox? When was the last time you did a colon cleanse? Because what happens is over time, over many, many years, just like emotional baggage gets buried and gets kind of compacted, feces, poo that doesn't move through, can get compacted, can get really in there. And so it's like hidden in the recesses of the bowels and stays there, literally leaching out into the bloodstream the toxins that remain stuck and festering in the colon. So there's a lot in that used as a metaphor for what happens when we have emotional stuff, mental stuff, programming, belief systems that don't get purged. What do? Same thing. In the background, through the subconscious and through our energetics, our energy signature, our energy field, these toxic debris, in whatever form we're talking here about programming belief systems, they leach out into our life. They leach out into the things that are manifesting, that we are our creations, our manifestations in life. That residue of doubt comes through in what we're trying to manifest and bring in terms of abundance or creative partnerships or whatever it may be. This judgment of self or judgment of others seeps out into everything, every communication we have, whether we're writing an email, whether we are making a blog post, whether we are having a phone call with someone. This threads, these undercurrents of whatever our beliefs or programs are that are still active in us are leaching out everywhere because they're deep down, repressed, compacted, recessed within us. And so, very literally, what's happening now at a very physical level is the same kind of deep purging, this last little bit, so to speak, at this stage is coming out now because it's being pulled out of the bowels and going back into the earth, for lack of a better word. So if you're feeling and noticing anything strange with your poo, please know that in most cases that I'm discovering working with clients and tuning in out of curiosity into other people's poo, that this is what's happening. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. So just relax, just know that as long as you are hydrating yourself, you're drinking enough water, drinking and eating enough fresh, living foods, raw foods that are hydrating, like lettuces and fresh apples and fruits and melons and tomatoes, all these things, cucumbers, just things that are hydrating is going to support your colon if you're experiencing things like bowel movements that are no longer as easy or as regular as they once were. Just allow it to be. Make sure you've got enough fat in your diet too, so that things are lubricated, so to speak. If it's the other way around and maybe it's too much, ease up on some of those things. If you're taking magnesium, maybe take a little bit less so you're not drawing more fluid into the colon. But just know, bottom line, whatever it is you're experiencing, allow it to pass. We noticed even with our dog, right? No alarm was taken. It was just interesting. And I noted in communicating with his body that, oh, yeah, he's purging too. He's a being. Why not? Right. And so he also was experiencing some shifts in his bowel movements with mucus that very quickly actually just worked its way out. Notice what is going on with your colon, with your bowel movements. If there was irregularity, don't be worried. Allow the worry to just dissipate and just allow it to be. And notice how it begins to self regulate again, and you come back into a place of balance. So much of the worry is actually what's going to create even more resistance. So just know that if there is a change, that it will come back into balance. And this is the same for your sleep as well. There's been a tremendous amount of energy and interesting things happening through the night. If you're dreaming more, hopefully not dreaming of your bowel movements, but all the dreams that we're having is really us in different realms having experiences in these last moments where the souls have an opportunity to play things out to help us purge. That's going to impact what happens in the morning when you get up and you're having your bowel movement or not. So just know that everything is serving a purpose. Everything is helping support you in your evolution down to the very last nook and cranny of shifts and changes in your body. So that's all I got to say about that. I hope this has been helpful for you. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. If you've had any experiences where you've noticed shifts in your bowel movements, in other bodily functions over the last 1.5, 2 weeks. And if this makes sense to you, if this makes sense to you, amazing. And if it's been helpful, please feel free to share this with somebody, because I know there's a lot of people that are silently worried because they're noticing these things changing, and they know the importance of having a healthy digestive system and a healthy elimination system. So feel free to share. It's a weird topic, I know, but it's a very real thing. And these bodies are amazing, powerful, really incredible vessels. And so we need to honor them. And the more we understand about them, the easier it is to go through these kind of turbulent times and be able to go through them with ease and grace and a lot more appreciation and understanding. So there we go. Here's to you. Here's to beautiful bowel movements in the days ahead and to your understanding and appreciation for your own body. Wishing you the most incredible day ahead and sending you so much love. Bye for now.